Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
How is it in Brunei?
Alhamdulillah,
Coping with
sir.
the curfew? Anyway, you don't go out at night, can? So it doesn't affect you anyway.
It doesn't.
So you
Yes,
can
sir.
study. So you can study, but do your assignment. There's only 20 plus of you so far, darling. Okay, today's lecture is going to be very quick. I've been on the go since 2 in the morning. Already three hours now. Then after this, I have to go back to my conference. Ugh. I wait 2 minutes. 20 plus. Nearly 30 of you. 2, 4, 6. Is it going down?
I'm not sure yet for today, but I
Mhm.
think it went down yesterday.
Yesterday, berapa? 100 plus or still
It's
100 plus?
100. Yeah.
Still more than 100, huh? I'm supposed to fly back to Brunei on on Sunday, but I have extended to next month because of the situation in Brunei. So my family and everybody said, stay back, since my daughter is 21 as well in November. So my kids say, you better celebrate your 21st birthday with your daughter yang di London. I said, but okay lah. An excuse to stay here. But it's getting too cold, so staying here is nice, but kalau sejuk, those of you who've been to UK or a cold country, it's no fun. Your tangan sejuk, your kaki sejuk, you tidur with a duvet pun, you're still shivering. And then going out, kalau hujan and the wind is blowing also is quite boring. But the only thing that I treasure here is the freedom. As I mentioned in the conference study, if we can increase the vaccination to 80% in Brunei, and the rest of the ASEAN countries also increase to 70-80%, we can live with COVID. In the UK, COVID is like macam nothing, macam so just like demam saja, like a fever. Only those with serious symptoms then will go to hospital. Other than that, people just self-quarantine. But most of the cases, I think, in Brunei is people who have not had dual vaccination, both vaccination. So hopefully all of you have had your vaccination. One of my daughter belum lagi vaccinated, which I find surprising. She's a government servant, and unfortunately the government did not organize it properly, so she's still waiting for her turn to be vaccinated. So, which is a bit surprising. So hopefully, by the end of this year, once we are fully vaccinated, then maybe there'll be a relaxation in terms of the lockdown and maybe traveling. Okay, so again, I hope you have your textbook in front of you. If you look at it, it's quite a short chapter. Yeah, it's on capital allowances. And as I mentioned last week, when you compute your taxable profit, depreciation is always a disallowable expense. Yeah. So you have your net profit, you add back depreciation, and all other expenses that have not been incurred wholly exclusively for the purpose of the business. Yeah. So non-business related expenses will be added back to the profit. Depreciation will be added back to the profit. Now, in all jurisdictions, because depreciation is part of a capital expenditure, And it's a measure of wear and tear of the use of an asset over its useful economic life. When the depreciation is not allowable, the government provides what is known as capital allowances. Yeah, so this is what this chapter is. In Brunei, we call it, I think sometimes we call it capital allowance, sometimes we call it wear and tear allowance, we call it first year allowance or initial allowance. Yeah, so the word allowance is there. In the UK, which Brunei follows a similar principle. When you buy an asset, you will depreciate the asset over 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, depending what your estimation of this useful economic life is, what your estimation of its residual value is, whether your depreciation policy is on a straight line or reducing balance method. Yeah. For capital allowances, the government will tell you what the rate is. It could be 20%, 50%, 100%. So when you buy an asset, usually you get what is known as a first year allowance. So whatever you incur in the first year, you get an allowance of 20% and also an annual allowance of maybe another 20%. So in the first year, you could get maybe an allowance of 40%. So if you, for example, let's do a simple example. Something costs 100,000, you depreciate it over 5 years. That means depreciation is 20,000 a year. Okay. If the government provides first year allowance of 20% and an annual allowance of 20%, your total allowance will be 40% for this first year. Yeah, so you have depreciation 20,000, capital allowance of 40,000. So what the capital allowance does is it reduces then your taxable profit by 20,000. So you add back 20,000 depreciation minus 40,000 allowances. So capital allowances has an impact of reducing your tax liability, depending on government's policy. In the UK, because they wanted to encourage entrepreneurship, they wanted to encourage people to go into business, or they wanted to encourage businesses to invest, reinvest, and to buy more plant, machinery, equipment to expand their business. They provide what is known as an initial allowance of 100%. So what happens is you buy a machine for 100,000, or whatever is for 100,000. Your depreciation is 20,000. Your allowance is 100,000. So your tax liability reduces by 80,000. But can you remember? I don't know your financial reporting. Have you ever heard of the word deferred tax? Anybody of you come across deferred taxation?
Yes, but
So
I don't understand it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Deferred tax is not a tricky word. Deferred tax means is you defer your tax payment to a future period. That's why it's called deferred tax. Yeah. So and deferred tax is based on timing difference. And in Brunei, the only timing difference in Brunei which relates to deferred tax is depreciation and your capital allowance. So let's take the first example. So you get 100% allowance. Yeah. So you have 20,000 depreciation and then 100,000 capital allowance. So you already got a full allowance. Yeah. So the first year you have a deferred tax benefit of 80,000. Yeah. So you've reduced your tax liability by 80,000. Come year 2, 3, 4, 5, you have depreciation of 20,000, but no more allowances. Yeah, because you already fully utilized the allowance in the first year. So what happens is your tax liability in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years increases by 20,000. So in year 1, you have reduced your tax liability by 80,000, but you have a potential deferment of your tax payment for year 2, 3, and 5. Of whatever the tax rate, yeah. In Brunei, it'll be 18.5% times 20,000. So you save your tax this year, but you pay the tax in the future period. So that's what deferred tax is, in a simple explanation. You have depreciation and your allowances. The difference between depreciation and your allowance is your deferred tax asset or liability. Okay, so if companies keep renewing their assets, they will get the 100% allowances every year. And deferred tax also depends on what the tax rate is in the future. The tax rate is 18% now. It goes down to 16, 15, to 10% in year 5. Then your deferred tax liability will be much lower in the future years because you're paying at a lower tax rate compared to the tax rate now. Okay. So hopefully in a nutshell, you understand what deferred tax is. What it is a deferment of your tax payment from this year to a future period. Yeah. So that's all it is. If you look to the notes to the accounts of financial statements, public listed companies, you can see in the notes to the accounts the movement in the taxation account. So you got current taxation, deferred taxation, then the movement will be your tax charge to the profit and loss account. Okay. So if you look at page 126, capital allowances are available to give tax relief for certain capital expenditure. And then if you look at the book, we have plant and machinery. There are different types of plant and machinery, building structures. So it tells you what you qualify, what doesn't qualify. Just read that. And then what I just want to cover is the page on page 129, the main pool. So with the capital allowances, it's no different than the earlier chapter on calculation of trading income, where you have your non-savings income, savings income, and dividend, the column. The same thing in the gray box here under the main pool says with capital allowances computation, the main thing is to get the layout right. Having done that, you will find that the figures tend to drop into place. So in a normal exam, you will have you'll be given what the annual investment is, what's the investment for cars and plant and machinery. All you need to do is the figures that are given in the question is to slot it in the right column. Once you've done it in the right column, hopefully, with the allowances, you will be able to calculate what the capital allowances is. So basically, I mean, if you, I think if you just turn to page 131, looking at an example there, you have 3 columns: AIA, which is annual investment allowances, the main pool, and then what the allowances is. So what is annual investment allowances? A business in the UK will be entitled to an annual investment allowance, or AIA for short, of £200,000. That is for a 12-month period. Okay, and AIA is for a 12-month period. That's why it's called an annual investment allowance. So more commonly in exam questions, sometimes the accounting period could be 9 months, it could be 18 months. When the accounting period changes, the annual investment allowances also changes. You have to do a proportional adjustment to the 200,000. So if, for example, the exam question is 18 months, the annual investment allowance will be 200,000 times 18 over 12. Yeah, because it increases proportionally over the number of months that it's increased. So it becomes 300,000. Likewise, if the accounting period is only 9 months, then the annual investment allowance have to be adjusted 200,000 times 9 over 12, which is 75%, which is 150,000. Okay. So if you go through the examples, you can see how it works. Yeah. So on page 130, yeah, in bold says where the period of account is more or less than a year, the maximum allowance is proportionately increased or reduced. Now, first year allowance for low emission cars. It's quite funny because a few days ago, I was a speaker at a conference on environmental issues, and we talked about how the UK government gives incentive. So, for example, if you have an electric car or EV car, you go into the central of London, you don't have to pay congestion charges. When you park in your car, you pay only 20% of the parking fees per meter compared to a conventional car. And likewise, if you have a low emission car, and in this case, a low emission car is where the CO2 emission is 50 grams per kilometer or less, you get a 100% allowance. Yeah. So any low emission cars you get 100% allowance. Now, the uniqueness about the first year allowance for low emission cars, it doesn't matter whether the accounting period is 9 months, 12 months, or 18 months, you will still get 100%. There's no apportionment. Yeah? So if it's less than 12 months, for example, 9 months, you don't apportion it over 9 months. You get 100% first year allowance. So some of the common exam problems that students tend to, or mistakes that students tend to do is first year allowance, they tend to also do a proportional basis. Sometimes annual investment allowance, students tend to forget to do apportionment basis. Okay, and then writing down allowance is 18%. So whatever the balance is, you get an allowance of 18%. So let's look at a very quick, let's just look at the example on page 131. Yeah, then you can work it through in your own time. And then we'll go through maybe 1 or 2 examples, then that's it, yeah? Since you're not sitting exams. I've been asked to, actually all of us have been asked to submit to ACCA the exam questions in the past, the assignment, the justification of why you have done this assignment, and how it helps in terms of the students' understanding of the module, whether it's auditing or taxation. But after this lecture to you, I'm going to have to submit all of this to Dr. Azrin, I think, so that they can submit to ACCA for the accreditation. Hopefully, the other subjects they use the ACCA textbook and not just the textbook that the lecturers think is suitable for themselves. But I think with COVID, hopefully they will be a bit lenient with the assignment. That's why I have to rethink your assignment, the second assignment, after getting the email that ACCA is looking at re-accrediting the ACCA courses. So make sure that when you pass your degree, you get full exemption from the fundamental level. So hence, that's why I have not given you your second assignment yet, because I need to rethink to make sure that there is sufficient coverage when you answer the questions, that it does cover some of the topics that I'm going to be covering in terms of the lectures. So maybe this weekend I'll try and think and give it to you early next week, yeah, your second assignment. I just want to make sure that when ACCA look at it, hey, your assignment is pretty similar to the first one. So what is the added value of your second assignment? Auditing is not a problem because I managed to do that, but taxation might be a bit trickier, because how do I do a computational topic as an assignment where you probably get 100% if I do it on a computational basis rather than essay basis. Yeah? So, okay, so just look at the example on page 131. Julia. Julia is a sole trader preparing accounts from to 5th April. At 5th April, the tax written down value on her main pool is 12,500. And in the year 5th April 2019, she bought the following assets: machinery, 190,000, a van, 17,500, and a car for salesman, CO2 emission of 100 grams, so that is not a low car emission. She disposed of a plant in 2018 at a cost of for £12,000 at a cost of 16,000. Calculate the maximum capital allowance. So I know you're going to be confused because you've never done this before, but once you get a question like this or an example like this, the first thing that you would do is just you do the headings. Yeah. So the heading will be AIA, main pool allowances. That's your heading already. Then all you need to do is look at the question and slot in the figures. So we have written down value of 12,500. If you look under the main pool, balance brought forward is 12,500. So what additions did she make during the year? Plant machinery of 190,000, a van 70,000. So she has total additions of 207,500. Okay. You get an annual allowance of 200,000. So there's a balance of 7,500, and that is transferred to the main pool. The car, which is not a low emission, goes into the main pool for 9,000. and then they dispose of plant of 12,000 to give a net balance of 17,000. Then your written down allowance is 18% of the balance. Yeah, so 3060, and then your total allowance is 203,060 pounds. So this is quite a common exam question. Usually, if we had an exam, I would probably put one question like this, and another question maybe in the next page, which has got a slightly different accounting period. Yeah. So if you're confused, don't worry, because you don't really need to understand it fully for exam purposes, but just look at the layout. Just understand the layout and the principles as to how capital allowances are calculated. So usually in exam as well, sometimes we have an example like this. And if you remember the lecture last week where we have our, your profit, you add back allowable and you reduce what is allowable. The capital allowance figure, that figure will not be given. You will have to calculate using this table. Yeah, so it's a part of a 20-mark question, and this accounts for maybe 4 to 5 marks if you get it right. So within a big question of 20 marks, there will be many little bits for you to calculate. So even if you get the bottom answer wrong, you still may get more than 50% of the marks if you get the rest of it right. So the good thing for me, for taxation or computational subject is, if you attempt a question, it's almost impossible to get 0. If you have attempted the question, if you just put a heading and nothing, of course you can't get any marks now. But if you attempted to try and do some calculation, I usually credit the students for trying, even though the answer is wrong. So the next example here is short and long period accounts. So I think if you just look at the next example, I think after this example, that's it. There's no more in this chapter, yeah? Because I'm not going to cover small pool and special pool rate and all the others. Because I think as long as you can understand the previous example and this example, then I think it should be okay. Now this example, if you look at the 4 columns, page 132, yeah, there's an additional column which is FYA, which is first year allowance. Okay, so when you look at Venus as a sole trader, it's prepared its accounts, end of April, it's got tax return value of 66667. She decides to prepare her next set of accounts to 31st December. Okay, so she had been preparing the accounts from 3rd to 30th April. Now she's preparing the next set of accounts to end of December. So that's May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So how many months? 8 months. Okay. So the next accounting period is only 8 months. Sometimes in the exam I see students counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, with their hands. It's good, because it's better to do that than try to guess how many months. The most common mistake sometimes people make is they consider it's like 9 months. They count April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, 9 months. Yeah, instead of, because the tax year usually in the UK starts from 6th of April, so people get confused. They use April as a full month, but here it says 30th April. So sometimes students do get mixed up about the start of the year or the end of the year. Yeah. So in this case, it's crystal clear. It tells you that her accounting period was end of April. Now she's changing it to end of December. So these are the information here. Purchase plans of 146666. You know, if you have odd numbers like 6667, 14666, you know that the figures should come out to perfect numbers, hopefully. Yeah. If you got a car CO2 emission of 90 grams per kilogram, so that is not a low emission car, so that goes into the main pool. And what else? She's bought a car of low emission, yeah, a new car, 11,000. She disposed of a plant for 20,000, optional cost 20,000. So calculate the capital allowances. Now, if we go through slowly, you have the headings, the 4 headings, okay? AIA, FYA, main pool, allowances. When you go from line to line, when you read the question, the first figure that you see is she's got a written down value of a main pool of 66667. So you just put that figure down under the main pool column. The next thing you need to do is to add up all the additions. And in this case, the only additions that qualify for annual investment allowance is the plan 1466666. Now, remember that this is only an 8-month accounting period. Yeah. So the annual investment allowance will be 200,000 times 8/12, which gives you 133,333, with a net balance of 13,333. And then any balance in the AIA pool will be transferred to the main pool, yeah, because you can get a further written down tax allowance of 18%. So she has also, next one is a low emission car of 11,000. So she gets a first year allowance of 100%, yeah? Even though it's an 8-month accounting period, gets 100% allowance of 11,000. And then what's the next one? Cars not qualifying for AIA or first year allowance, which is a CO2 emission of 90, which is more than 50. That's 9,000. Dispose of assets of 20,000. So you have a net pool balance of 69,000. Then 18% of that, 18%, a portion over 8 months. Yeah. Your tax written down value of 18% is based on 12 months. So what you need to do is to apportion it over 8 months. Yeah. So 8/12 times 18% of 69,000 is 8280. This question actually would come out in your exam if you're sitting exam. I may change some of the figures slightly, but the important thing is when you look at an example like this is to get the heading. Yeah. So remember, in personal income tax, when you calculate the tax payable, tax liability, there are already the 4 columns: yeah? savings income, non-savings income, dividends, total. With capital allowances, it's the same thing: column, annual investment allowance, AIA, first year allowance, FYA, main pool, and allowances. Yeah, and then all you need to do is know how to do the sequencing in terms of tabulating whether it's your allowances or your tax liability or tax payable. So the important note that you see at the bottom here, it says note that annual investment allowances and written down allowances are reduced for the short period of account, but first year allowance is given in full. Yeah. And then just very quickly at this next example, we've already done 12 months, we've done short accounting period. So the most obvious example will be long period of account. Yeah. So Oscar started trading on 1st July and prepared his first set of accounts to 31st December. 1st July. Yeah. So you start from July, August, September, October, November, December. 6 plus 12 is 18 months. Yeah. Make sure you get that right, the number of months. And this is what he's done. He's purchased plants of 130,000. Car for business, 100 grams, so that's not low emission. And plant, another plant for 235,000. Calculate the maximum capital allowance and assume that the rates are the same for both accounting years. So again, you have this time you have your 3 columns: AIA, main pool, allowances. He has got, because he started a business, that means he's got no written down allowances brought forward. Yeah. Because he's starting from 0, so then he's got no allowances brought forward. Yeah, so that's why you don't see any figures relating to written down allowance carried forward. So what has he done in the year? He's purchased these 2 plants, 130,000, 235,000, with a total cost of 365,000. The AIA will have to be a portion, so it's 200,000 times 18/12 to give you 300,000. Balance of 65,000 will be transferred to the main pool. Then you have cars that you purchased for 11,000. Add it up together. There's no disposals to worry about. Okay, so add it together. 18%, a portion as well. 18% times 18/12 to give you 20,000 plus. And your maximum capital allowances is 320,520 pounds. Yeah. So again, there's a note here. Note that annual investment allowance and the written down allowances are increased for the long period of accounts. If there was for any first year allowance, you still get 100%. Yeah, whether it's a short or long accounting period. Okay, so just look at the format of how the allowances are calculated. If you look at the tax tables at the back, where is it? So if you look at page 494, I mean your tax tables, yeah? Capital allowances, plant and machinery main pool is 18%, special rate pool, I didn't cover special rate pool, 8%. New car emission, 100%, 18%, 8%. So the rates are given to you in the tax table. The annual investment allowances also has been given to you, the figures here. So in the exam, you wouldn't have to memorize these figures because it's already given to you in the tax table. Okay, so that's all I wanted to cover on this topic. It's short, but it's important as well because when you come up with a tax system in Brunei, it is important to appreciate that government uses fiscal policy or tax policy to be able to govern its revenue or the economy. Yeah. So if government is short of money and they want to increase revenue, they increase either the tax rate or increase the tax base. Yeah. So if Brunei wanted to increase the tax revenue, they either increase the corporation tax or petrol income tax. That is now. But if they maintain the tax rate and the petrol income tax rate as it is, the only way that they can increase revenue is to widen the tax base to maybe partnership, sole proprietorship for one, or introduce personal income tax, yeah, taxing individuals. So there's a few things. You either increase the tax base to include sole proprietorship and partnership. So these are business registered under the registers of business name, or also include extension of tax to include personal income tax. Yeah. So those are the kind of things that government needs to look at if they want to increase their revenue. But at the same time, government also are mindful that they want to promote entrepreneurship. They want business to develop. They want business to grow. Because if you encourage businesses to grow, you encourage investment, then you create more employment opportunities for the business. Yeah, because when business grows, you employ more people. So from the government's point of view, that okay, if the business sector grows, the economy grows, unemployment rates reduces, then the burden on government to support the unemployed also reduces. Yeah. So on the one hand, yes, we may lose a little bit of tax revenue, but the government will spend less on social costs, social benefits, and maybe other social effects that comes with high unemployment. So how do government encourage entrepreneurship? One is obviously in Brunei, if you have a turnover of less than 1 million, you are exempted from paying tax and from doing an audit. Yeah, but since we're covering tax from a tax perspective, then the government wants to encourage people to run businesses. So as long as your turnover is less than 1 million, you don't have to pay tax. So this is encouraging people that if you do have profit, you can plow the profit back into the business to expand the business. The other way that government could encourage entrepreneurship is by increasing the capital allowances in the first year. At the moment, government, unless I'm out of date, but the government does not provide 100% first year allowance for investment in assets. It's only about 20% or 10%. So if the government wants to encourage entrepreneurship, they could upload a lot of the allowances earlier so that you reduce your tax liability, and then maybe you pay tax in the future years, but then there may be other benefits as well. Yeah? So in a taxation system, yes, you need to look at a system which will be able to generate sufficient revenue to government for them to cover the government expenditure. In Brunei, government average expenditure per year is about 5.6 to 5.8 billion Brunei dollars. Yeah. Obviously, with the second wave of COVID, unfortunately, with the curfew and partial lockdown, I think the government deficit will certainly be much higher. The unemployment will be much higher. I mean, as an example, for like my daughter's business, business was thriving, successful. A lot of business similar to my daughter's business was thriving, was successful. When the rest of the world was suffering from COVID, we were COVID-free. Then suddenly, out of the blue, we have this Delta variant, and it got out of control. I think we have maybe nearly 8,000 cases now. So even small businesses like my daughter, when you hear that McDonald's has 1 cases, then everybody gets frightened to go to McDonald's. When you hear that there's an isolated case at Super Safe or Hua Ho, people are frightened to go to this outlet. They find out that a lot of the other restaurants that have put notices that, one of their staff is positive. So people, and then when you find that runners and suddenly tested positive, so people are frightened to buy takeaway. They're frightened to get it delivered to their house. So what they do is, a lot of people tend to eat at home. And when they do that, a lot of the retailers, the restaurants, cafes suffer badly. Yeah. So I think, for government to come up with a taxation system now, obviously it's not going to be the appropriate time, simply because people are suffering. And it's not a time for government to think of raising revenue. But for the purposes of your assignment, don't assume that there's COVID. Assume in the real world, yeah, in an economy that is thriving, that has no external factors like COVID, then maybe in what can government do to increase its revenue to cover its expenses. Maybe one of your assignments is to make a prediction what the deficit is going to be at the end, come March next year. Maybe I should give a prize to one of you who gets the closest prediction correct when the government announces budget. Let me think about it. Sounds like a good idea. Then I'll tell Dr. Amir and say, see, look at that. My students have made a prediction and so has got it right. Do you want to give him or her a prize? Might be a bit offended, I think. But, that's what the academic world is. We make predictions. I predicted a deficit of 3.33 billion at 3 point, but I was a bit out. I think the actual deficit was 3.3 billion. But still it was quite close compared to 1.85 billion the year before. Yeah. So that's it. Next week, I'm not going to cover, I'm going to go straight to partnership. Okay, chapter 11. And when I talk about chapter 11 on partnership, I will cover issues relating to what you should be studying in your business law, company law, about composition of partners, changes of partnership, and what a partnership is, as defined by the law. Yeah, and more importantly is how profit is distributed, and how do you do the formulation in terms of changes in partnership. So next week on partnership there'll be quite a number of examples. Yeah, examples of partnership staying the same, partnership that's changed its salary structure, a partnership that's changed its profit sharing structure, a partnership that's admitted a new partner, a partnership that has dismissed a partner. So there'll be a number of scenarios in terms of partnership. Okay. Any questions? Today I'm wearing a tie for you all, because I'm in a conference. Anything in the chat group?
No, sir, no questions.
How do I wait? Okay, everybody, I guess you're surviving the new norm now, yeah? All I can say is just, take care of yourself, take care of your health, and also learn to relax as well. My wife was complaining yesterday. She said at night, why is it that I cannot watch Netflix? And this? I says, because of curfew. Everybody is now going on the internet. Everybody is, trying to. I think Netflix is quite popular. People are just streaming YouTube, whatever it is. Hopefully, they will try and improve the the IT infrastructure to make sure that there's less disruption, especially now with curfew, everybody's staying at home, apart from the 50 people that were caught. But hopefully you're able to still continue your studies and whatever search you need to do during the curfew time, because I think the uptake and usage is quite high during that period. Okay, so there's nothing. I'll say good morning. Enjoy your lunch. I still have to continue my conference now, which starts in another 10 minutes because it's lunchtime now. Then I'll see you all next week. Okay? Bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir.
You take care. All.
Thank you, sir.
Stay safe, sir. Assalamualaikum.
Okay. Bye.